Can't wait to find out. Niall, what is in your notes today?
Well, your moment has arrived, Robbie. The podcaster who President Trump made deputy director of the FBI is back to being a podcaster again. I'm talking, of course, about Dan Bongino. The president called into Bongino's show yesterday for a little chat, and he said this.
And they vote illegally. And amazing that the Republicans aren't tougher on it. The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting.
Those remarks caused outrage, understandably. Joe Scarborough, the MS Now host, responded on X, "Try sane washing this." And the New York Times columnist Nick Kristof noted very fairly on X, quote, "We don't know exactly what he, Trump, meant. He may not know either, but it sounds to me as if he's calling for Republicans to suppress Democratic votes." It does sound very much like that, and if it is that, it's a fundamental attack on democracy taking place in plain sight. Yet there's another part of this story that hasn't been fully recognised. Donald Trump is, as usual, posturing as strong, but these days he's getting weaker. He's not conquering all before him. He's at rising risk of being cornered. Last year, back in power, Trump steamrollered his way across the political landscape. The Democrats were still shell-shocked over their 2024 election loss, and institutions, universities, law firms, and media companies among them, bent the knee to Trump with abject eagerness. But it's been very different this year. 2026 isn't even 5 weeks old, and Trump has suffered a succession of setbacks. By far the most important, the people's victory won at steepest cost, came in Minneapolis. Renee Good and Alex Prietti, citizens of this nation, were shot dead in the street by masked agents of the government. They then had their reputations traduced by some of the most powerful people in the country. There was uproar, and that uproar fueled massive protests. And here's the crucial thing. The protesters won, for now at least. Trump softened his line. The new public face of the operation there, Tom Homan, is talking about a drawdown plan. Trump being Trump, that could change any second. But the point is that he was pushed back. And that didn't only happen in Minneapolis. He tried flexing his muscle on the global stage, suggesting he might use military might to seize control of Greenland. European nations pushed back, and Trump backed down, at least on the military part. He's tried intimidating Harvard University, and Harvard has pushed back. Trump has backed down there too, at least according to a New York Times report yesterday, indicating the administration has dropped a demand for a $200 million payment. Trump incidentally reacted furiously to that story, calling it, quote, nonsense on Truth Social last night, and claiming he was upping his demand to $1 billion. So we'll see. Trump has meanwhile backed down in another sense on his narcissistic renaming of the Kennedy Center after himself. Several artists cancelled planned appearances after that. Now Trump says the center will close for about 2 years from the 4th of July. He claims this is happening to speed along renovations. In a response to Pablo Manriquez of Migrant Insider's question about why Trump is closing the Kennedy Center for 2 years, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said, "Is it renovations, or is it that he couldn't fill the seats? You tell me." But back to Trump's comments about elections. They aren't evidence that his bruised hands hold the country in a vice-like grip. They're evidence that we're entering the wounded animal period of his second term. And wounded animals, as everyone knows, are dangerous. Let's be clear. Trump's Republicans are on course to lose the midterms, in the House at least. They're defending a minuscule majority with an unpopular president who keeps doing massively divisive things. It's no surprise that polls show a clear Democratic advantage. But if the Republicans lose the midterms, the whole edifice of Trump's political tower begins to crack and teeter and sway. There would be House hearings. There would be subpoenas. Almost certainly there would be impeachments. If you're Donald Trump, there would be big trouble. Big trouble, that is, if the elections take place without impediment, if no strange confected emergency throws things off, if the president accepts the results. What clues does the evidence provide on that? He doesn't accept his defeat by about 7 million votes in 2020. He pardoned the people who rioted to overthrow that result and keep him in power. His FBI raided an election hub in Georgia just last week. And now he wants his party to somehow, some way, take over the voting. It's time to brace ourselves. We're on a collision course here, and we're on it not because of Donald Trump's strength, but because of his weakness.
You know, I see things slightly differently.
I'm sure you do.
Imagine. But one way, you know, you're talking about examples of things where Trump has been defeated or has stopped persisting in the thing he's trying to accomplish. And I think, not in every one of those cases, but a lot of it comes down to his execution strategy, which has just been very flawed given the power they've had for this past 2 years, which they're about to lose because they're going to lose control of the House, at least. They had complete control of the government, and they don't pass any laws. This, for instance, you know, the Haiti migrant, you know, that got reversed by a court, well, because it's just a declaration Trump made. And, you know, we could argue whether it should be within his power to just declare it. I'd argue maybe it should be because the president should have immigration authority. But look, if you don't like the court disagreeing with him, pass a law. Just have them put into law that we're changing the immigration policies from that part. Like, then there will be some structure, and then if the court still disagrees, then you can rail about it. Or if Democrats vote against it, then put them on. You have them on the record, and you can go to your base and say, well, we would like to cut off immigration from Haiti, and we think most of the country would too, but Democrats are blocking it. But they won't go that route on so many of these things. They won't seek there's no legislative force to them, so they can be undone by the courts, and then Trump is just fuming and frustrated. And I think part of that is also an exhaustion that his own side feels, that we're not accomplishing anything that has any staying power because it's not being put into law.
But, I mean, the fact that it's not being put into law, perhaps we actually don't disagree by that much in this score. The fact that it's not being put into law, or there aren't even attempts to put it into law, that's not happening by accident. That's because Trump and people close to Trump believe a president, well, so long as that president is named Trump, should have massively expansive powers to override Congress, to override the judiciary.
And I believe I should have a pony, but like it's not. There are defined powers for good reasons of the executive, and Congress is supposed to have a lot of powers. And just nobody has thought to say to the White House that, hey, you know, if you really want it this way, tell the Congress, tell Speaker Johnson, he'll do whatever you say. And then get the Senate to do something. And if they block it, they block it. Then try it your other creative way. But they're not even trying it.
Because they don't. But isn't the obvious logical extension of that argument to say they're not trying it because they don't believe it, that they don't actually believe that Congress should have those powers to curb him?
I think Congress has just gotten really, 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 really lazy. And it's convenient for them to not have to vote on anything, because they have all fancied themselves content creators and cable news talking heads and pundits, and they enjoy just participating in the conservative media ecosystem without having to do any real work of taking difficult votes. And this is true to some extent and then on the Democratic side, maybe they want to do something, but they're just in the minority, so there's no collaboration anymore. There's no like, oh, well, at least we can work together to advance some bill. I mean, Amy Klobuchar is leaving the chamber to go be governor of a state, hopefully for her, because then you can actually get your way. You can actually do things you want to do. Whereas I think we would have previously thought the idea of someone leaving the Senate to go be a governor would be not traditionally the way you'd go, because Senate is more of a national profile. But there's nothing to do. There's no work to be done.
Right. I mean, I think where we perhaps disagree is I see the congressional picture as part of a much broader landscape of Trump's consolidation of power and refusal to accept any check on that power. So then you have him fulminating against judges, and Stephen Miller talking about anytime there's an adverse ruling from a judge, it's an attack on whatever Miller characterizes an attack on. He characterizes it as invalid. And so that's why I think you put the judiciary stuff with the Congress stuff, with the election stuff, and it becomes a very dark and ominous picture.
Yeah, I mean, the judiciary is, I think, more active, or maybe not in a specific way, but in a general way, feels more pressured or emboldened to be active because Congress has stopped being any kind of check. I think that's true at least at the Supreme Court level, where I think they take more cases. We're like, well, somebody has to decide whether the president can do this because we know Congress is not going to object. I think they do feel that motivation. Next up, a profile of Congresswoman Nancy Mace says that some of her staffers are concerned for her well-being and they accuse her of abusing her office. Stay with us.